name is Mia Vanzura, and I am a senior at the University of Richmond. I'm a Russian Studies, International Studies double major, and a history minor. I have spent the last year doing research on the Soviet underground art movement. I became interested in this movement last spring when I took Dr. Joe Troncalli's Russian Literature and Culture class. During this class, we discussed various Russian artists and looked at different pieces that had been written about them. Our professor also told us some about his own experience with the Soviet artists. This piqued my interest, and I spoke with Dr. Troncalli about the possibility of doing my senior thesis on the nonconformist movement. He was very receptive to this idea, and he suggested that I apply for an Arts and Sciences summer research grant. As a recipient of this grant, I was able to plan a trip to Russia, where I could actually meet and work with the artists that I would be writing about. I began my research by visiting the Jane Vuhir-Zumali Art Museum in Rutgers, New Jersey. This was an important step in my work, because with over 3,000 pieces, it is the largest holder of nonconformist art in the world. This museum has an extensive library with a lot to offer in terms of background information, as well as a very knowledgeable staff. The majority of the pieces were out on display in the museum, and being able to actually see the art was really helpful for me. It was by walking through the exhibits and studying the art that I was able to narrow down my topic. I was particularly drawn to a group known as the Sterligovites. I was first drawn to the Sterligov school because of the peaceful quality that was present in all of their paintings. After doing some more research, I learned that this group was led by a man named Vladimir Sterligov, who actually developed his own art theory concerning spirituality, space, and form in art. The next step in my research was my visit to Russia. This was all around an amazing opportunity. I got to experience the art of the nonconformist in the place where it originated. The highlight of my trip was the work that I did with Gennady Zubkov, one of the premier students at the Sterligov school. I spent several days working one-on-one with Gennady, interviewing him, observing his classes, and simply learning about him as a person. Gennady was the only student in the Sterligov school who wanted to continue Sterligov's work after his death, and he still has students to this day. He actually invited me to spend a day with his class so I can understand his and Sterligov's method of teaching. On the day I spent with Gennady's class, we went to the St. Petersburg Botanical Gardens, and each of the students was instructed to make sketches of anything they pleased, using the technique they had just studied in class. After a day in the gardens, we went back to Gennady's studio and critiqued all the works that had been done that day. After looking at the pieces, we cooked a meal and all ate together. Gennady later told me that was the same way that Sterligov conducted his classes. He found that an instructional dialogue was the most effective way to teach. Talking with Gennady was helpful because he showed me how Sterligov wasn't opposing the government. He was just creating art in the way he believed was correct. During the Soviet period, an official culture known as Soviet Socialist Realism was established, and anything that did not conform to that was considered illegal. Sterligov, as an individual spiritual artist, did not fit into the confines of official culture. I discovered that this is what attracted me to him. Art for Sterligov was more than just a pastime. It was a way of life. My time with Gennady was also helpful because I was able to learn firsthand what it was like being a nonconformist. These artists were willing to give up everything they had to follow what they believed in, and I admired this passion and drive. While I was in St. Petersburg, I also got to spend a lot of time with my professor, Dr. Joe Troncalli. He was the one who got me interested in this topic in the first place, and having him as a guide around the city really enhanced my experience. He was the one that originally introduced me to Gennady, and he also took me to the Nonconformist Museum in downtown St. Petersburg. Joe is friends with the major leaders of the movement who are all currently working together at this museum. This place is important for the nonconformist movement because it is a product of the Soviet period. Not only is it a museum, but also any sort of artist is allowed to come and produce their work there, regardless of what sort of art it is. Painting, sculpture, audio, film, anything. And regardless of how good or bad it is. The leaders of the Nonconformist Museum want everyone to have an opportunity to produce what they believe is art, since they themselves were so restricted under communism. I returned to Richmond in the fall, but my research has not stopped. I have continued looking at different sources to broaden my knowledge of the artists, and I am currently finishing up my paper. This research has given me a much deeper understanding not only of the Russian underground artists, but also of Russian culture in general.